Good evening. We're going to get started. I am Janet Jackson, and I've had the opportunity and the privilege to chair the Safety Commission now for well over a year. We were appointed in March, I think, of 2018, and our very first meeting was held in April of 2018. I was going back through my notes. I think we've had over 20 meetings since then. They were all open to the public. We had one public hearing during that time period. And I just have to, at the very beginning of this meeting, say thank you to my fellow commissioners. Our last meeting was one where the subcommittees presented their draft recommendations, which is why we're having this meeting tonight for your input. We will vote on October the 22nd. As I went through this process myself as the chair, I wasn't really sure what I might be seeing as the product as we came to the end. I am excited about what each and every subcommittee presented. Some of it is very practical. I would say that some might be extremely aspirational. And when I say that, I say it from the perspective of maybe budgetary concerns, but that's not our concern. I was not given any restrictions when I was asked to chair this. So if we send forward to the administration those very aspirational items, it will be up for them to decide if they're implemented or not. But the creativity, the thoughtfulness. I know that so many times people wonder, well, why are they just sitting and listening to what the police department is saying? Well, again, I would remind folks, our job was to review the current policy, practices, and procedures, and then using resources beyond that. So in every committee's case, they went far beyond what occurred in the meetings. There was all types of research, whether it was the 21st Century Police Report, or others, in each and every committee. And so again, I want to thank you as the chair, because this is now well over a year. You've given up a lot of hours, and I think that the work has been critically important. And I'm going to be very excited for us to vote. On October the 22nd is our next meeting, and the commissioners will need to vote on each and every recommendation as a separate entity. So we actually have it scheduled now as a 6-hour meeting. I don't know if it'll take that long, because as you go through the recommendations, in several cases, subcommittees made the same recommendation on different items, and so we'll be able to collapse some of those into just one. Right now, they're coming from individual subcommittees, but before we come together again, some will be merged. So this evening, we'll have the opportunity to have you, the members of Columbus City, to speak to us on those recommendations. And again, this is hopefully going forward. Again, what can we do to improve our police department? Your timing, there were speaker slips. You were asked to fill them in before you came down. But if you came down and you didn't complete a speaker's slip, I believe Denise in the back of the room has them, and you still have the opportunity to complete one. We will take speaker slips up until the hour of 6:30. So when you come forward, I would ask for you to, I'm going to call your name, but still to identify yourself and then to share your comments with us. So the first person this evening is Nora Baldoff. Just a moment.
Sure.
One other, I was reminded, so I did say 3 minutes. When there's 1 minute left, there will be a sign raised behind me, and then at the end of the 3 minutes, there'll be a buzzer. Okay? Thank you.
Sure.
Please.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Nora Baldoff, and I'm a practicing community social worker. I'm also trained as a legal observer by the National Lawyers Guild several years ago. Since that time, I've been an impartial observer and taken notes as I was trained at many rallies, protests, and marches here in our city. And I've been really shocked and horrified to see the difference in how participants are treated at a rally about climate change or women's rights versus participants at a rally for accountability and transparency with this police department. The difference is visible and it's palpable. Police at these rallies are out in full, intimidating, aggressive force. They will often hide in nearby alleys and then charge in, driving their patrol cars too fast, swarming in on bicycles all at once. They've ridden their horses too close to marchers. I've seen a horse rear up right next to people trying to exercise their right to free speech. They use bikes to physically push against people who are allowed to be standing on public sidewalks. I've seen them pepper spray nonviolent protesters, even incapacitated protesters, directly in the eyes at close range for an extended period of time. And they intentionally block views of arrests, going so far as to bring out a bedsheet in order to do that. They videotape participants, and they make nasty jokes about them. They've followed participants after events, and they have arrested them for minor or made-up actions. These are all people trying to exercise their right to free speech, people who have just recently lost a valued community member in many cases. These tactics do not occur at rallies that are not about police brutality. They do occur in the plain light of day with many witnesses present, myself included. I shudder to think what happens when there are not so many witnesses present. From your subcommittee's work, I was very pleased to see recommendations for an independent civilian review body to watch over the department, for independent investigations, for immediate drug and alcohol testing of officers involved in serious incidents, for increasing training on implicit bias in the history of policing and the Black community. I agree with all the recommendations related to the FOP contract. Bad cop behavior should never be erased from records at any time. They're common sense, and they should be implemented quickly. I also came here to say this: if we don't ask for what we really want, we can forget what that is. And what we really want is a world where needs are met by local communities, where problems are addressed not with Band-Aids or criminalizing, but with resources and opportunities. In any discussion of a police department, just as in any discussion of a nonprofit, we need to ask ourselves, how do we put ourselves out of business? And I strongly recommend that funding is diverted from the police department and given to a local organization or coalition with strong relationships and history of work with local communities to test models of community engagement, skill building, and support to address problems that we are asking the police department to address now. If we can give Stormy Daniels $500,000, we can give maybe $2 million as a start.
Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you. Thank you for coming down. Deborah Crawford.
Hi again. I want to sincerely thank you for the many hours of meetings, work, and study that you obviously put into your recommendations. Thank you so much. With your commission recommendations, we now have multiple sources of data of what people and officers of color in Columbus have been saying for decades. We must have Columbus police reform and transformational change. We have the matrix findings with confirming voices from officers, the public, non-uniformed employees, and hard data, pointing to the need for transformational change. We have a 20-plus clergy group calling for reform because of the horrific stories they have heard from their officer church members. Officers so fearful of retaliation, possible job loss, and their safety. Most of them are desperate to remain anonymous. More recently, we have letters from another group of female and Black officers to the commission detailing the disparities in discipline and promotions and reinforcing the extent of racism and sexism within CPD, officer to officer within CPD. Transformational change takes constant, relentless monitoring, hard work, transparency, and accountability. We have not had this in the past with CDP. We've already heard from CDP FOP leadership about what can't be done in the recommendations. In one of your commission meetings, Brian Clark said something to the effect of, this is an exact quote, that the commission's reports would be a roadmap for the next chief. There is absolutely no guarantee of this. All your efforts could be undone if you do not have recommendations that live on well past 2019, 2020, 2030, beyond and regardless who is chief and who is mayor. Your recommendations must include systems that leave a lasting legacy for ongoing change to occur. Your recommendations must create mechanisms for the constant, relentless monitoring, transparency, and accountability that will be required. This will be a monumental task. Do not assume that any of what you have uncovered will be studied, worked on, implemented, unless you do something about it in your recommendations. For the sake of all citizens of Columbus demanding fairness and equity in policing, for the sake of all the families who have been hurt and lost their children at the hands of Columbus police, for the sake of all the CDP officers needing help and wanting support to do the right thing, and instead they get retaliation. I did not have the time in 3 minutes to address my opinion of your most important recommendations. So I decided to reinforce to you, you must leave a legacy in your recommendations or it will all be for naught. Thank you for your due diligence, thank you for your work, and thank you for the legacy that you must leave for Columbus.
Thank you. I believe that the name is Jerry Plaster? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
That's it.
Okay, sir, please approach.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Plaster. I have really 3 different things. One, the announcement for this meeting was yesterday morning, and a link to the topic that would be discussed was 2 hours, 40 minutes, and 25 seconds. The second thing is I want to ask if one of the recommendations that this committee could put forward is to eliminate the whitewashing of rogue policeman records. Currently, after a certain period of time, disciplined officers' records are completely whitewashed. And I think that that's part of the union contract, and I think that's something that should be addressed. And the third thing is I think the Columbus zones need to be realigned. The number 4 zone goes north into North Linden, almost to Morse Road, only 6 or 7 blocks from the Zone 1 police station. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Adrian Hood.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, since Nora and Miss Deborah already touched on a couple of things, I won't go back into them and waste my time reiterating those. I'm glad that the Matrix report was done. However, we didn't need that report because the things that the Matrix report did find have been going on with Columbus Police Department for a very long time. When I spoke before, I spoke about 1999 when the Department of Justice came in and found the Columbus Police Department to be negligent of racial profiling and excessive force at that time. And at that time, the same person here that chairs this committee, Janet Jackson, was the city attorney. And now here we go with this committee. And I want to say that I have hope and faith that the recommendations that y'all gave will be taken to heart and to consideration with those that have the opportunity to make those changes. I really do hope that that happens and that y'all's work is not in vain. I was very surprised about the letters that were written by the police officers who are within the organization and the fear and intimidation that they are subjected to, and how we are expected as the community to put trust and faith that these same individuals will come into the community and serve and protect us. And yet again, most of the committee, until it was brought to their attention, some of these members, had no idea that the letters even existed. To me, that's called gatekeeping. And it is something that is wrong with this city, has been going on for a very long time, and we need to get that under control and out of the way if we are going to see any type of sincere change within this organization and within the city of Columbus. We claim to be the biggest, safest city. We need to have that be a reality. We need to be the biggest, safest city, and the only way that we can do that is if we deal with accountability and then move forward with some actions to rectify the things that have been done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hood. Laura Downing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Downing, and I'm a licensed social worker at Community Refugee and Immigration Services. First, I'd like to thank the Commission for the incredible work they've done to develop this report. I work with victims of crime with limited English proficiency. At the last public forum, I came and shared about a dozen examples of Columbus police officers failing to provide our clients adequate language access when attempting to make police reports, and instead using unqualified bystanders, perpetrators, children, unqualified police interpreters, or no language access at all. This puts the officer, the victim, and the bystander interpreter in danger and is a violation of the limited English proficiency individual civil rights. Although the issue of language barriers and trust among Latino and Somali communities is mentioned on page 42 and 43 of the report, in the section on community views of police, I could not find specific recommendations for addressing these issues. So here,
Was that from Matrix when you referenced the report? Is that the Matrix report?
it's the report that was linked on this
Okay,
event.
all right, thank you.
Here are a few specific recommendations for increasing CPD's adherence to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and to 21st century policing protocols, which call for law enforcement agencies to ensure reasonable and equitable language access for all persons who have encounters with police or who enter the criminal justice system. Provide every patrol officer with easy access to a department-issued cell phone to enable them to quickly access qualified and unbiased interpretation. Clarify implementation of the department's language access policy to specify what steps a patrol officer must take when encountering a limited English proficiency individual that stresses the prohibition on using friends, family, neighbors, or children for interpretation except in temporary and exigent circumstances. Improve training to ensure consistency across officers, that reasonable and equitable language access is being provided in all circumstances. Increase recruitment and incentives for bilingual and bicultural officers. Make diversity and inclusion liaison officers into dedicated positions rather than having them continue to work full-time on patrol, or create civilian liaison positions in the framework of the Franklin County Sheriff's Department. Provide translated versions of victims' rights booklets and victim services handouts. And this is a simple one. Improve access to a Spanish-speaking operator on the non-emergency phone lines, or get rid of the option to press 1 for Spanish, because this often just directs someone to an English speaker, and it causes a lot of confusion and distress for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Downing, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Sorry, you said Title VI of, but I couldn't write
The
fast
Civil
enough.
Rights Act of 1964.
Civil Rights of 1964. Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks.
I want to share with you that I'm about to call the last name of the last speaker slip that I have. So again, I think I see some coming forward. But if you have decided that you want to speak this evening, please see Denise. Now, would Yvette Clayton? Yvette Clayton? Kayla Merchant?
Good evening, Commissioners. I've reviewed the recommendations of the Safety Advisory Commission and wish to provide additional feedback. On the topic of independent review, other cities that have previously been placed under a consent decree, such as Tulsa, Oklahoma, have created civilian review boards, as was outlined in part of your report. This has been a long-standing ask of community members, and it remains a need, as is evidenced by the existence of this commission. I urge you to make this an official recommendation, and I urge CPD, the FOP, and the Office of the Mayor to implement this body as a good faith effort to improve trust between the community and police. Additionally, it is critical that CPD implements a 24/7 whistleblower hotline. Companies large and small alike have similar programs where staff members are able to report unethical behavior anonymously without fear of retaliation. This is part of fostering an ethical culture within the division. On the topic of training, I again refer to the City of Tulsa and their requirement post-consent decree that all incoming officers have a bachelor's degree or higher. Requiring additional exposure to different cultures and socioeconomic statuses by the way of post-secondary education, whether it be a 2 or a 4-year degree or an equivalent, will help reduce instances not only of excessive force, but also aid in fostering cultural competency and empathy between officers and the communities that they serve. And most importantly, educating all officers and staff within CPD and civilian support services about community trauma and the ways in which traumatic events experienced by communities as a whole, as well as individual community members, informs their views of the police. Lastly, crisis intervention training should not be optional. All officers should be CIT certified without exception. On the topic of hiring practices, I wish to reiterate from my June testimony the absolutely dire need of the implementation of a compliance and ethics department which, similar to the independent investigative entity, would operate entirely independently of CPD. I applaud the Commission for including this in the report and taking it into consideration. In sum, I urge Mayor Ginther and CPD and the FOP leadership to perform a cultural overhaul within the division and hire a chief from outside of Columbus. It is my sincere hope that the work of this commission will not be in vain and that meaningful change will come to our city. Our community is in pain and is in desperate need for hope. It is up to Mayor Ginther, Interim Chief Quinlan, and the other officials in leadership to begin the healing process. We are here meeting you halfway. Please close this gap. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to recall Yvette Clayton.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. And I had 4 topics, but 3 of them were previously covered, so I'm not going to restate them. But the comment I had, so basically, I had a statistic that was saying that Columbus population as a whole had, sorry.
I tell you what, it seems like you're really nervous. Why don't I permit you to sit down and I'll recall you? Okay. And you'll start your 3 minutes so you can just get your thoughts together, okay? Monica Stith.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's a great opportunity that I can come here this evening. This is my second time speaking in front of the panel here about our community of the Driving Park Business District. As the speakers have said, it's a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, as well as destruction that is allowed to go on. We have laxness within the police department and coming and addressing the needs that we have. And from the city's prosecutor's office is saying that there is a lack and there's a shortage of police officers within the community. Our police liaison needs to interact with the commissioners, the civic association, and the business association. Also, when the police is called out there, they are to get out of their cars, find out what these boys are doing on the corner. They have taken over the street of Seymour with the drugs, etc., going on. And anytime that there is a person where you have your property, no trespassing signs on it, and one of the people that is on drugs there, which they said that is a sickness, that can come up on your property half naked, pass out, the police comes, they put on their gloves, they do not touch this person. This guy is so out of it, he can hardly stand up. I thought there was a service that was called Asset that could come out and take these people off of your property. 2 cruisers came out there, which was a waste of time to stand there on that sidewalk and do nothing to help that guy. Wonder if he had OD. You're already talking about you have an OD problem here in the city, and it's right there in our community. When there is a shooting or any accident that takes place, the police has no respect for the residents and the people that live there, that you're going to block an intersection up. You got 6 patrol cars out there, police officers standing around, but yet you know that those are one-way streets there, and those police officers should either park their car there so the traffic that is coming down Livingston, they know that they have to turn there and not turn in the middle of the section, and the police did absolutely nothing about it. I feel that the commissioners should try to come up with some type of plan that we could have a foot patrol in our community. If it's funds that is needed, and to see how much money they gave that Stormy Dam. I mean, it's just ridiculous of how money is being wasted within the city, and we as citizens are not getting any help. I can only speak about what's going on in our community, what is allowed, and nothing's being done about it, and I am crying urgently before someone gets hurt to get some patrols out there and find out what's going on, and stop using the excuse that narcotics is busy and they can't do it. What are the police being hired here to do, and how are we as citizens to get the help? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Annie Ross Womack?
Greetings. I bring you greetings from the oldest and boldest, the strongest civil rights organization in the nation, your Columbus NAACP. So my message will be short and succinct. We have been watching, we are watching, we will continue to watch where this report goes. We're very cognizant of all the hard work that everyone has put into this committee. We've met on several different levels with several different people. So we understand the work that goes into a report such as this, but we also understand that nothing is new under the sun. So we've been in this fight for a long time, and some of the same things that everyone else has said, it rings true, that these are just regurgitated issues that have been plagued by this community for years. So again, we have watched, we are watching, and we will continue to watch. And I'll bring you greetings from our president, Ms. Nana Watson, who's somewhere else, and our chair of this committee, Mr. Elder Larry Price, to let you know that your Columbus NAACP is with you in the good, the bad, and the ugly of this report. And as we continue to dole this out, we've talked to Mayor Ginther and Interim Director Quinlan, and so we are very sure that something good will come out of this report. Again, we're watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clayton?
Hi, everyone. How are you? So one of the things I wanted to touch on with police in the community was one of them was mental health and community relationship with the police and mental health, because sorry, y'all. On the topic of intersectionality, talking about police brutality in Black communities, we also have to talk about kind of mental health training in police departments, because there are often times when police officers aren't really aware that maybe someone's maybe having a schizophrenic episode or a meltdown. And another thing I had in my notes was just the disproportionate race in the police force, despite Columbus's Black population is at 27.6%, but that isn't reflected in the police departments. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Will Petrick?
Good evening. Can y'all hear me? I'm a little taller than the mic. I wasn't planning to speak tonight.
And can you, I'm sure I didn't get your
My
name
name is
correctly.
Will Petrick. You got it right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm from Kenmore Park in North Linden. And you said right at the beginning you wanted to kind of look to the future. So first, just want to thank you all. I know this has been an extremely long process, so thank you all for your participation and leadership. Thank you for the opportunity to have people weigh in. I know that's been a concern that's been raised of people in the community, that it has been very much, we're hearing from CPD, but we're part of this city too. So I really appreciate everyone sharing their perspective. I just think as we move forward, I'm with others here that I don't want this to be like a strategic plan that just gets put on a shelf. And so part of that is, I think, in the recommendations, I hope y'all include that, this is a roadmap to transforming CPD. And so as part of that, what I would like to see, like, a nonprofit that gets grant money, we're all taxpayers, we're paying for this service. We deserve transparency. So part of transparency means, we deserve to see, one, are police officers from the communities that they're serving? Where are we at on that? And are we moving the needle towards having more police officers actually embedded in communities that they're from? Two, in terms of the transparency piece, how many people every single year are the police killing? Civilians. And let's know their race, their ethnicity, their gender. If that's a goal that we actually want people to be more safe and have less police violence, let's track that. Let's let the public see that. If we want accountability, if that's a goal that we're moving towards, one, I think Civilian Review Board was brought up. But this whole thing is, if we're marking down goals, I'd like to see every single year a report from the city, a report from CPD to show what steps are you taking in that direction of accountability and in steps of transparency, in steps towards training around racial and gender bias, and in steps towards providing that trauma-informed care for police officers. So I think there are some good recommendations that are coming out from the community and from y'all. I just want to make sure that as we move forward, what is that mechanism so that we get to see is progress happening, and if not, what can we do to move that forward?
Thank you.
Will, do you mind if I ask you a question? So some of the things you brought up and others we have in our report. One thing that we don't have that kind of made a little light bulb go off, you talked about the annual report. Do you think it would be helpful if the future CPD annual report included an annex with updates to our recommendations for transparency as they continue on? Or I guess I'm asking, is that the question you were asking?
What do you mean by an annex to our recommendations?
So the CPD puts out an annual report. Every year it's completely public. If they added an annex, an attachment, something to that report that was just on our recommendations with updates, so everyone could see that every year how they've been updated, is that what you were alluding to, or?
Yeah, I think that one would be of value, and I think we need to go an extra step to ensure this kind of public participation, because just because they put out a report doesn't mean most people in the city actually ever get to read that or see that. Sure. So part of what I would hope would be that everyone on this commission gets to see that report and share it with people in their community. If we have a civilian review board, that's another place where people in the community can actually learn what's going on. But I think in addition to just a report, we need to create space for this public input. So once that report comes out, give the public an opportunity to take a look, and then in a month, let's have another conversation about how we can push and move the needle even further.
Thank you.
Yeah.
also real quickly, Will. You spoke to tracking police data in regard to race. You said race, ethnicity, and there was one more I think you said.
And gender.
And gender. And can you point us in the direction of where, I know nationally it's state by state how that information is kept. Is there somewhere you can point us nationally that we could look at to see what other states are doing in regard to capturing that kind of data?
I unfortunately don't have that research or information. I would welcome anyone here who might. Okay.
We have that accountability tracker that shows by race. We also have the state of Tennessee who's successfully done the Citizens Review Board.
That's my response.
Thank you.
Not
Thank
mine,
you.
but thank you all others.
Thank you.
Since the audience had a little banter, I have to add to that. How are we to know that what the police put out in any report is legitimate? Look at the ears reports that you receive. So just because the police adds a little addendum on, these are the 40 recommendations, and this is our progress on it, I would want that as a citizen verified by some non-police or civilian review board.
Thank you. I don't have any additional speaker slips. Let me just, and I think I can say this for the entire commission. We have not worked for the months and months that we've been working to create a report that goes on a shelf. Now, I can't tell you exactly how this gets to be implemented, et cetera. That's not a part of it, but I think I absolutely can speak for all of us that we expect actions to be taken. It may not be everything, right away. We just don't know. But I think we all have an interest in making sure that it is received by the mayor, and there will be significant efforts to implement many. I certainly can't say all. I don't know the number of our recommendations, but it's quite a few. But we will see. And I just want to reassure you of that as much as we can as private citizens of Columbus. Is there anything else? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're empathizing with your, desire for information as well. Once this committee sunsets or is no longer in place, we want to be filled in as to what the progress is of our work. So we will be making that request, hopefully, to the mayor and those who will be deciding what the next steps are. So, hopefully at some point, we will get progress reports, and maybe there'll be a mechanism for you to receive those as well. All along with, our work, it's almost been a dynamic process where, we didn't, start out with any preconceived notions about whatever else, which is why we're holding this meeting now, because your input is important. And already I'm hearing, folks on the commission thinking maybe they could tweak even some of the recommendations that we've already made. So I, for one, Madam Chair, appreciate the input that we've received so far today.
Is there any of the other commissioners? Well, we have passed the time for the submission of speaker slips, and so I think we will adjourn this meeting again. We meet on October the 22nd. I think the hour is 1 o'clock. I don't know the location at this time, and that is a meeting where, again, recommendation by recommendation, we, the commissioners, will be considering the recommendations and voting on them. That will be the purpose of our meeting. Thank you so much for taking your time to come and to be with us this evening. Thank you for your input. Thank you for holding us accountable. As some of you have been here, before, we truly appreciate it. The meeting is adjourned.